setting up the event. So in front of me is a kind of a messy table right now, but I want to tell you the components. If you're in charge of the first setup of the day, I'm going to give you some helpful hints on that. So we always cover our tables with these kind of pretend native. They look like Pendleton blankets, but they're from flannel. Not flannel. They're fleece. Excuse me. They're from fleece. But I would, even on indoor events, I would encourage you to be sure that you get these items. These are pieces of sheet metal, and you're like, what is the sheet metal for? Well, we have learned over many years, I'm going to make some noise with it, doing, doing, many years, that sheet metal is a great magnet for our holders that we have. And my handy assistant, Jessica Johnson, is going to show you with the magnets how that works. So we had a great volunteer who made these handy dandy little doobies for us, and with all of our items we have a information about our cost, and sometimes we have a detailed information about the actual product, but you slip them in here, and if you're setting up new, you want to be sure that each one of these has Velcro on the back of it that hooks to the wood, if you can see the Velcro there. That otherwise, when the wind blows, all of your stuff will go flying across the across the venue. So you want to be sure that you, even indoors, I'm going to give that back to my assistant. Even indoors, I would recommend that you do that, because our signs, we want to have some depth on the table, and instead of everything laying flat. And so sometimes even in the indoors, the sign is kind of heavy and it will flip over on you if you don't have your sheet metal underneath it. Be careful, the sheet metal, we tried to cover it with gaff tape so you don't cut yourself, but sheet metal can be a little dangerous. Let's don't have the kids carrying that around. If the grown-ups could do that, I would really appreciate it. And you basically just cover your table, kind of spread them out, and use that to be able to set up. So when you come, there will probably be 2 or 3 totes that are called display table. Those have one of each item. It has the name with the wooden blocks in it, and you want to take out only those things. Leave everything else in their boxes. Take out just your display table items, set them up, and kind of make them look nice and make them look pretty, I guess is what you'd say. But at the same time, don't dig into the other boxes other than to look at them and get familiar with which boxes are carrying the extras of each item. What happens is, you have an event, 8 people volunteer at the beginning of the day, everybody starts grabbing boxes, and if you're not in charge of looking for those display boxes, you will have people unloading things that we don't want unloaded. So it's nice to have one person kind of in charge of looking for the display boxes. We usually label things with big old bright white or yellow tape with big magic marker on it. So if it says display box 1, 2, 3, those are the only ones that the volunteers should be getting out and setting up. The other thing we have are display signs that say Indigenous Institute of the Americas, proud sponsor of Santa Fe Days in the Park. We also have one of the pull stretch displays that has pictures on it. It depends on the venue. If you're outdoors and it's windy, really the only thing you're going to want to use are the vinyl signs that can hook to the front of your fabric with safety pins. And typically you want to just be sure you're looking for that and be sure that that is up. It can either be hooked on the table, or it can be hooked, if you're using a canopy, it can be hooked on the canopy. We have canopies, we have 10 by 20 tents, but you need to, if you're going to do an event, help us with an event, we really need to know a week ahead of time what items you want to pull, what kind of equipment you need from us. Please don't wait until the day before an event and then call me up and say, Annette, I need a table, I need chairs. where's the this, where's the that, because all of our stuff is stored in a U-Haul, and some of it is outdoor and some of it is indoor, and there's actually time periods that we can only get into the indoor during the daytime, so I have to know that in advance. We want to encourage you, if you find some unique venues, we don't want to discourage you from actually helping us with our NASHA market in unique and special ways. We just need to know in advance so that we can be sure you have everything that you need. The other thing is some of our items, if any moisture gets on it, it can ruin it. So for instance, I'm just going to start actually talking about something. This is a very special gift from the Frank Stewart family. Frank Stewart is a Cherokee novelist, and he wrote this wonderful book. It's called River Rising. It is a fictional account of the accurate story of the Trail of Tears that the Cherokees went on. And so we have been gifted many of these books that we are allowed to sell in the market as a result of his passing in, I believe, November of 2017. But we don't want to leave these books out if it's really moist outside. Even if we are, from a display standpoint, be sure that you keep everything locked up in tubs and only one thing is out on the table if it's moist outside, because it can really ruin the books, and then we're not taking care of something precious that has been given to us and gifted to us. The same thing goes with some of our paper things like the map. So this is a laminated map. We had it purposely laminated for display, but most of the maps are not laminated, and so if they get moist, they ruin before you know it, so you have to be careful of that. Also on our signs, some of the signs we really want up every single time that we set up, no matter where it is our sponsors for the year. So if someone is a sponsor for Santa Fe Days or IIA or both, then they're our sponsor for 365 days. They're not just a sponsor for 2 days at the event, and we want the community to know who contributed money that helped not only with our NASHA market, but our whole entire functioning through the year. Our money helps us develop our mobile educational displays that go along with the Seed Ambassador program. So for instance, if for Breast Cancer Awareness Day, we developed a mobile display on plants that were used by the Cherokees to treat cancer. And so we did the research, we developed setup cards that could be looked at, by people so they could learn what the plant looks like and what have you. Well, all of those things were from money that we received either through printing costs, in-kind donations, or cash from our sponsors. So be looking for some kind of place cards and put several of them around when you're setting up. Be sure someone is in charge of remembering that. We have a lot of items that have to do with our medicine ways and traditional medicines, and we have some beautiful teas which is one of the ways that we would use through healing is dried plants and fresh plants. So you'll get questions like, I've got arthritis and I want to know what kind of plant I should use for that, or I've had a terrible problem with my diabetes, I can't get my blood sugar. You may know a lot of things over your lifetime that you've gathered, but be very careful about giving medical advice. I try to stay away from that even myself, and so we have certain teas that we sell that have been studied and are FDA approved, even though they are plants, and those are the ones that I like to use. So this is one of the few references where it was learned directly from the different tribes that he studied, and he studied it over many years, and he explains the use of the plants and which tribe used it for what purposes. So if you have a question, this book actually, you can look it up by ailments. You can look it up by the name of the plant, the common name, as well as the scientific name. And so I would encourage you, if someone has a question, you can look into this reference and use this reference point, but please be careful not to tell them things that you learned on the internet or Google it. Again, the whole Google thing is really concerning to me, because most of our information about native ways is inaccurate on the internet, and I don't want you to rely on that. as your primary resource or reference book. What we're working on, and we'll have by the time you see this video, is a 3-ring binder that will have a description of each of the products that we have for sale that you can study. We'll try to have those in a PDF version that you can download and read before you actually do an event. But even if you're kind of caught off guard or you're a last-minute volunteer, be looking for that 3-ring binder, and when things are quiet, go through that binder and look at all of the information about it. So we'll talk about how it relates to our culture, how people use it today, and we'll also talk about the warning signs for things, because certain plants should not be used in certain ways. So I'm going to give you an actual example. So valerian root was used as in a tea by Native people to help with sleepiness, or to help you get sleepy. And so I have observed that at the health food stores that has now become a popular item in a pill form. And so I took some of the pills and I opened up the capsules, and then I measured out the ground valerian root compared with the amount of valerian root that one of our consultants, who's a medicine woman, has given us for just one dosage. And needless to say that the dosage recommended by the health food store was completely out of proportion with what should be used, and probably to a dangerous extent, but also the way in which it was ingested was actually improper. So when you make a tea, you're taking plant, you're either heating it or letting it absorb into cold water, and you're sipping it. You're doing little sips throughout the day. You're not drinking it like a cup of tea. But in the instance of valerian root, it's in a capsule. They're telling you to swallow the actual plant in its grounded up form, and you're swallowing 4 capsules of it, which is probably 8 times what the potency that would be in a tea that's recommended. So that's an example of where people may recognize what we're selling, but they may, it's kind of that concept, Western medicine concept of if a little's good, then a lot must be better, and that's not how we view plants and medicines at all in our culture. So if people start asking you, those kind of questions, this will be a reference book that we'll have with you that you can go to, but please stick with that unless you have someone who's a senior, who has done the market before and can help you with those kind of answers. So that's my advice on that. We're going to start talking about products that we are selling. Keep in mind that every year I try to find new things, so old things will go away, new things will come back. But we have a certain company called Nawadi Herbals, and I've been watching this company for a long time. It's a family-owned company up in, I believe it's Missouri, and the head of it is Cherokee descent, and most of his blends that he uses, his herbal blends, come from our traditional ways. And so thinking about our medicine, when we refer to native medicine, we're referring to really anything, whether it's energy, whether it's a plant, whether it's something that we feel or that we put out into the environment. That's like medicine. You've got good medicine, there's good things that happen, and then there's bad medicine. There's things that are not good for us. So when I use the word medicine or medicine ways, I'm referring to the native view. I'm not referring to a Western view of native culture, or a Western view of native culture, or a Western view of medicine in general. So our traditional belief about plants is that Creator brought to the earth not only illnesses, but brought the plants to heal those illnesses. And so our belief is that for every illness we have, there is a plant out there that is designed to heal us. The problem is, for the last many hundreds of years, we've only been able to document, I believe, 14% of all the plants they estimate on the world's surface. So we have to investigate a lot more plants in order to try to find those mechanisms for healing. So our job as IIA is to stick with the types of plants as much as possible that are here in North America, or plants that were brought in the early colonial years and have grown prolifically across the United States, whether it's actually in an aggressive form or not. The nice thing about native culture is we've always adapted and welcomed any new innovation, anything that is helpful. If tennis shoes feel good on a concrete surface, there's no reason why we can't paint them up and use them the same way as moccasins. We prefer moccasins, but we'll go with tennis shoes, boat shoes. So the same goes for some of our herbal blends. The majority of the plants in there are from North America, but also we have found that by mixing some things from other lands that we can enhance the tea. So you might see green tea, for instance, as on the label of some of our mixtures. That just depends on what the tea is for. So the ingredients in the Nuwari herbal teas, and there's a different tea for different topics, if you want to call it that. My favorite is the healer tea. Everyone on my committee has been subjected to my to that tea at one time or another, and the reason I like it is because I have been sick for several years after using it, and so when I even slightly feel under the weather, I'll have a cup of that, and that kind of starts getting my immune system working. The one that I'm going to show you today is called Toxaway, and it works to help cleanse your blood and cleanse your system. But again, not the word cleanse in terms of Western thought process where, there's colon cleanses and all these things that people do that basically eliminate a lot of water from your body and leave you dehydrated, but also gets rid of a lot of your healthy bacteria and stuff. So when we're talking about cleansing, we're not talking about that in that way. We're talking about it being a slow, careful process. And so the Toxaway is used by a lot of people who are recovering from drug or alcohol addictions, and they know that they've really been hard on their kidneys and livers, and they have found that it has really helped in their recovery. That doesn't mean other people shouldn't use it. I use it because I've had to take Tylenol several times this year for back injuries, and so Tylenol is really hard on your liver, and so I try to kind of combat that with it. So here's an example of our teas, and this is what it looks like in the jar. It's a raw form. If you look carefully, you'll see little bits and pieces, and it looks like somebody went out and got your mulch out of your yard and put it in a bottle. And so your expectation of a tea by the word TEA is that, it's going to taste good, right? It's going to taste like Earl Grey or pomegranate or what have you. Our teas are for medicine purposes. They're not meant for you to be drinking every day, 4 times a day as a part of your regular routine. They are for specific ailments, or they're for, for healing in some sort of way, whether it's overall healing or not. And so it's not going to taste the way you're thinking a tea tastes. Somebody said it's more like making an elixir. Like, you think of that word as more of a medicine type of a word, and it gives you more respect for what you're doing. So most of our teas are designed to have either a tablespoon or a teaspoon and loose into a tea bag. There it is right there. So about that much, if you can see the palm of my hand. One of the things we actually sell with our teas are these infusers. It doesn't have to be precise, your measurement, but if it says a teaspoon, then you use a teaspoon and you don't use a tablespoon. That's just how it works. Okay, I don't have my reading glasses on. Can't remember. Oh, it's this way. Duh. Okay, I'm gonna start this again. And so we use these tea infusers. We sell these also for people's convenience. You open this up and you put the raw dried plant form in here. You close it up. In this case, these teas are used with hot water, so you'll boil water, you'll put this and leave it in to soak. The longer you leave it in to soak in the water, the more the medicine properties of the plants come into the water, and this is what you're explaining to people when they want to buy it. You want to explain to them this is more of an elixir, this is not a tea for your average day-to-day consumption. It is for health reasons. The nice thing about this infuser is when it is done, when you've left it in there 15 minutes, 30 minutes, the longer you leave it in, the more medicine you get. Then you just squeeze down on this, and it kind of squeezes out more medicine out of the plants that's in there. So anyway, it'll say on the bottle how many times a day that is recommended at most while you're sick. So for instance, the healer tea can be used up to 3 times a day, but you don't want to do it 3 times a day for 365 days. It's just not the way it's done. The same way for the Toxaway, it has its recommendations. We carry about 8 to 10 different kinds of things, some for bone health, memory, sleep, stress, depression, women's time of the month, all of those kind of different types of teas. So try to become familiar. Educational sign will typically give you a one-line explanation of what it can do, and that way it's a little bit simpler for you. Then they have taken these products and made them into oils, balms, and creams. So this is like a balm. So this has the same medicine in it as a certain topic, basically, of tea. So if you had like something for your lips and your for colds and things like that, you think of in our culture today, we think of a balm as something on your lips. These are used at the heat points that are going to absorb it into your body, and so it's not something you do all day long. Again, it is a medicine, and that's what we try to stress. Same with the oils. These are for helping it absorb into your skin, and the same for these to absorb in your skin. And then we also carry pet shampoo bars, which are basically have anti-itch plants in it, and so it's kind of a natural product. And we have a mosquito and bug repellent that has a lot of the plants in it with no DEET. And here's another item. This is a soak using salts. Some of our teas, if you can't afford it in the large bottle, then we'll make them into small packets for you with the instructions on it, so you can learn more about it. Here's an example of a pretty magical plant that's in many of the items for colds, sore throats, and what have you. It's called Osha root. Looks kind of funky. It grows up in the mountains, sometimes New Mexico area. And I tell kids when we're doing, again, what is this about? It's about education. So we educate people about how to be careful about the plants that they use. This is an education about the plants and how they grow. So Osha has been found, people will take it, put a little piece of it, bark, into their gum and suck on it or just chew it, and it helps build your immune system. It helps you get well, keeps you from getting a harder case of the flu, colds, allergies, what have you. But the interesting thing is pharmaceutical companies, of course, have discovered the magic of this plant and have tried to replicate it. And my understanding is they can't seem to get it to grow in a laboratory situation, meaning that it will only grow where it wants to grow and it will only grow in its natural environment. So the problem is that pharmaceutical companies who are now trying to make derivatives, make medicine from Osha, are not using sustainable practices. And so we have to be concerned again where one of our medicines is now being discovered by Western medicine. But Osha's in particular, what I tell kids is this is like North America's Amazon. If we allow it to be harvested without sustainability, then we're going to lose another one of those really, really important medicine ways. And the Osha root is in a lot of these teas that are for that kind of healing. They also have, now this is called a Christmas tea. This is a cheerful tea. This is the one you can use all the time if you want. because it's mainly, like your peppermints and your almost like a chai type of a thing that you think of during Christmas time. But again, it comes from plants. That's what all teas are from, is from plants and dried flowers and dried stems and what have you. And just like if you drink too much regular tea or you drink too much regular coffee, you get jittery and nervous. That's the medicine effect on you. And so you want to be cautious, even if it is a yummy tea that's sweetened and has a pleasant flavor. Same way with these teas, where they may not have a pleasant flavor, as some of people have called it, tastes like trees. It's meant to be that way. It's a medicine. Most of our medicines are that you get from the pharmacy are, mixed up with things like cherry flavoring or peppermint, something to distract you from the nastiness of it anyway. So these are in their pure form, and that's what we try to sell, is something that people can relate to as far as how we used plants for our healing.